Good evening. Please welcome Meredith Shea, the Academy's Chief Membership Impact and Industry Officer.
Hello. On behalf of Academy CEO and recently re-elected President Janet Yang, I want to welcome everyone here tonight to our theater and those of you joining us virtually for our annual Academy Gold Rising Mental Health Panel, Mind Matters, Accessing Resources for Mental Wellbeing. I'm Meredith Shea. I'm the Academy's Chief Membership Impact and Industry Officer. I'm so honored to be here with all of you tonight. This initiative and this topic means so much to our Academy and to me personally. Celebrating our 8th year, the Gold Rising program is an 8-week internship enhancement and mentorship program designed to give students and emerging film professionals from underrepresented communities the tools and experience to advance their careers in entertainment. They receive exclusive opportunities to gain insight from Oscar winners and nominees, Academy members, and industry leaders representing all areas of the filmmaking process. This year, we have 86 interns, representing 48 different colleges and schools from across the globe, many of whom are here with us tonight. Post-pandemic, 2 strikes, mental health is needed more than ever in our industry and in our community at large. And mental health and well-being is not something that the film industry is known for. There's 18-hour days, long jobs away from home, a taxing creative process, and there's so many uncertainties. For the first time, we invited all Academy members to participate in this vital discussion. And this is to remind everyone that regardless of the stage of your career, you could be working for 50 years or 5, it's always okay to ask for help. So we changed the focus to make this about resources, which is why I'm so grateful for our incredible panelists from organizations across our film industry to provide resources to all of you. I want to sincerely thank our Board of Governors for their leadership, all of our Gold Rising sponsors and partners who make this program possible, our ASL interpreters for the evening, and I want to recognize the amazing impact, inclusion, and talent development team led by Kendra Carter, who produce our year-round suite of Gold programs. It is now my privilege to introduce the moderator for tonight's panel discussion, Dr. Janeane Bernstein. She is a journalist, writer, and mental health advocate. She's inspired by her late father. She became a voice actress to deal with her anxiety and explore her creative side. In 2020, she founded Outside the Box, a mental health initiative designed to address the mental health crisis through creativity, connections, and acts of kindness. How about that, kindness? We all need a little bit of that. Her latest book, Better Humans: What the Mental Health Pandemic Teaches Us About Humanity, was written during the pandemic and features the voices of students, teachers, mental health advocates, and professionals. She's a member of the National Alliance of Mental Health Westside Los Angeles, Women in Film, the Television Academy, and SAG-AFTRA. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Janeane Bernstein.
Thank you, Meredith Shea, and thank you everyone for joining us. I am so honored to be your moderator this evening. Before we begin, I want to thank the Academy, Academy Gold, and Bettina Fisher for inviting me to be part of this impactful evening. I hope you are as excited as I am for this incredibly meaningful and engaging conversation about promoting mental health, well-being, and resilience. Individuals in the entertainment industry face their own unique stressors and pressures on a daily basis. Tonight's panelists will share industry insights, strategies, and resources that are available to you as you navigate this exciting path forward. Okay. I want to begin tonight with an icebreaker. I hope all of you have one of these little stress balls. What I'd like you to do is answer the following 3 questions with me if you feel comfortable. The first question, if you feel comfortable, is hold up your stress ball if you have struggled with your mental health the past several years. Thank you. Okay, great. Second question, please hold up your stress ball if you have a friend, family member, maybe a colleague who has struggled with their mental health the past several years. A lot of hands up. Finally, last question. If you feel comfortable, please hold up your stress ball if perhaps you've struggled your entire lifetime with your mental health. Thank you. Thank you to those who felt comfortable joining me in raising your hands and sharing the answers to these questions. We are not often asking one very important question. How are you, really? Tonight, we welcome you to interact with our esteemed panelists during the post-reception downstairs. Ask questions, reach out. We have resources for you that we'll be sharing with you at the end. Many of you might be aware we were living in a mental health crisis prior to the pandemic, and it packed a wallop, didn't it? Even now, years later, you might still be struggling to make meaningful connections, to get out in the world, especially for all the introverts. And have any of you recently seen what happened to Elmo when he asked his followers on Twitter, also known as X, he asked one very simple question: how's everybody doing? The responses were eye-opening, weren't they? I heard some giggling. Over 240,000 people responded with answers such as, not good, Elmo. I'm really going through it, Elmo. And on and on and on. People referred to this as trauma dumping on poor Elmo. But something wonderful happened. The president chimed in, as well as celebrities and thousands of people who didn't know one another. They connected in a common struggle. They provided comfort and support. The surprising thing is, it took a fictitious red puppet to get us to ask ourselves this very essential question. How are you, really? We are here tonight to encourage you to check in with yourselves, with your friends, with your families, with your colleagues, as you navigate your essential roles in the entertainment industry. We want to provide you with a toolkit of resources to help you feel less alone when you're struggling. There should be no stigma when it comes to mental health. We should be openly taking those mental health days without worrying about what others will think, especially if we're dealing with depression, anxiety, or other mental health conditions. I hope tonight's conversations will help you embrace the idea of peeling back your layers and asking yourselves, how am I, really? And what will help you foster resilience when life feels difficult and unsettling? We have an incredible lineup of panelists tonight who are here because they care about your mental health today and into the future. No matter what path you choose in life, the most meaningful work you will ever do is to take the very best care of you and to surround yourself with people that see you, that hear you, and support you unconditionally through the highs and lows of life. Now, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Erin Raftery-Ryan, right here, if you could stand up, the Executive Director of NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, Westside LA. She is looking forward to connecting with you and other panelists in the post-reception. Let's get started. It is my honor to introduce you to our panelists. Please welcome to the stage Jaymes Black, CEO, the Trevor Project. Dr. Akua Boateng, psychotherapist with Boateng Consulting. Sanaa Lathan, actor, director, Young Wild Free, Love and Basketball. Lynn Morris, CEO, Didi Hirsch. Peggy Rajski, producer and founder, The Trevor Project. Rubinstein, executive director, Behind the Scenes Foundation. Eli Stone, content creator and influencer. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I'd like to. Hello, okay, here we go. I'd like to begin by asking each of you to introduce yourselves and include your pronouns, please.
Okay. Oh, this one works now. Hi, guys. My name is Eli Stone. I'm 24. I'm a content creator, and my pronouns are he, him.
Hi, I'm Rubinstein, Executive Director of the Behind the Scenes Foundation. I've spent my entire career working in the entertainment industry. My pronouns are she, her.
Hey, I'm Peggy Rajski. I've been mostly a producer, but I also directed an Oscar-winning short called Trevor, which led me to found the Trevor Project back in 1998. And I continue to this day as a board member with the organization.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynn Morris. I'm the CEO of Didi Hirsch Mental Health Services, where we provide mental health, substance use, and suicide prevention services. And my pronouns are she and hers.
I'm Sanaa Lathan, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, I am Dr. Akua Boateng, licensed psychotherapist, media contributor, and the founder of my own consulting firm, which is an emotional wellness consulting firm in the intersection of ambition and emotional wellness in the entertainment industry, sports, and business.
Hello, I'm Jaymes Black, president of the Trevor Project, and my pronouns are they, she, and he.
And I'm Peggy, and I failed the test. I'm she, her.
Same, she, her.
That's okay. So, Sanaa, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you kick off our panel discussion. I was going to ask a question for you specifically. How did the pandemic and 2 strikes affect the mental health of people in the industry?
Oh, wow. Well, I think it's a twofold thing. For me, I mean, it was traumatic. I mean, here we were with this invisible threat. We didn't know if, we were going to live or, if this was the end. 24-hour news cycles, I think people held on to them for some kind of hope, but then that was, doom and gloom, seeing all the people who were suffering and dying. A lot of people self-medicated. I'm so happy that I stopped drinking before the pandemic, because who knows what I would have been. But I did self-medicate with cookies and cream ice cream. On the flip side of that, I am in the introvert club. You'd be surprised, there are a lot of people who are in the industry who are, face forward in front of the camera and who are very introverted, and I'm highly sensitive. And there is a relentlessness to being in this business. You have to have a steel exterior, you have to have a hustle mentality, and it never ends, no matter what level of success that you reach. And we've seen this with some of our biggest stars. We've seen them, have breakdowns in front of the world. And I always say you have to cultivate that sensitive heart in order to make your art, but then you have to have the skin of a warrior in order to navigate the business. And it gets exhausting. It gets mentally and psychically exhausting. And so once we kind of realized, okay, maybe we're not all gonna die, there was a comfort for me in being able to just kind of rest and be still and be with my friends and be human again and kind of realize that we all are a human race, right? We're all going through the same thing. And the world became a lot smaller. So it was both. It was traumatic, but then also there was a sigh of relief to have that time.
Time we had never had before.
Yes, yeah. And it was interesting because when it was over, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, wow, now we have to go back to work.
But I like it at home.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to you, Eli. As a content creator and influencer, how did the pandemic affect you?
That shit sucked. I was in college at the time, so it was 2019. I was a sophomore. And, you know, it's funny how Gen Z, how we always talk about, like, oh yeah, we know social media is bad for us. We know all these different things. But we think we're among the minority percentage who just doesn't feel it. We're like, oh yeah, social media, it is so bad for us. Reels? Oh shit, that's kind of funny. Let me send that to my friend. And so it was really weird during COVID just to see kind of like the self-awareness for a lot of us kicking in of like, oh crap, we are among the minority, we are getting impacted. And during COVID, quite frankly, we got throttled mentally. Like that was really rough. Even now, thinking back, I tend to gaslight myself into thinking that it really wasn't all that bad when I was pretty dang miserable, and a lot of my friends were as well. And so I think now in hindsight, it's more viewing it as like, I don't even know. I think it's just more, we can't gloss over how impactful and how dreadful that was for us. And it's okay to complain. It's okay to be upset about those years taken away, like out of our developmental phases of life. And I think that's kind of the mindset I have going into it, is like, I don't want to complain, but I recognize just how obscure and how weird it was for us to have to go through that as a generation.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I do have a question, and any of you can answer this. What challenges do you see Gen Z facing now?
That was quite the chuckle there. Got something to say?
No, I have thought about this a lot, really a lot. Certainly, given the work that the Trevor Project has done, and I actually recently served as the interim CEO for just under 2 years. And so I certainly was aware of a lot of things from the board perspective, but when you're really running the organization, you really get a much deeper dive. And I became aware of a couple of things, not only in terms of the presenting issues for our callers and the people who reach out, which is whether it's text, chat, or old school phone. We have a very particular audience we cater to, and those are LGBTQ plus young people in the 13 to 24 age range. We get people younger calling, we get people older getting in touch with us. But there is a reason we focus on that group, and because there's research that has repeatedly shown that is one of the highest at-risk groups for suicidal ideation and risk of taking their lives as any group in the country. And when we started the organization, I became aware of that fact at the time after I had made this little film that was about a 13-year-old kid who, wonderful, innocent, musical theater loving, who word spreads at school he might be gay, and he starts to think that maybe it'd be the best thing for everybody if he checked out. And that film, I'm so grateful that it succeeded as a piece of entertainment, as a both like warm, poignant, even humorous at times film, that I know my experience based on the source piece it was based on, I laughed and cried when I saw it, and I hoped as a director to capture that. So luckily did. Now, think that was back in the mid-90s. Now we are how many decades later, and those same presenting issues still exist. Those statistics are still bad. And the same issues are still driving so many young people to the extreme of considering taking their own life. Now, I can talk about the fact that the reasons for a lot of our young people, it has nothing to do with their identity or orientation per se. There's nothing inherently at risk about, if you're queer, that you're going to have mental health problems. The reasons you have problems is because of how society, culture, organized forces, legislatively, state, local, national levels, conspire to truly drive you to the point of questioning your value and worth. It has long been my belief, and I come from a family that has a history of depression, and there's been suicide in my own family. What I know is that shame kills. And shame can manifest in a lot of ways. But I particularly understand the stressors for our group and what's going on. Then when I think about the other stuff, which is you have a generation that has grown up with drills for class shootings daily, right? So you've got the stress of having your adrenal fight or flight heightened all the time, because who knows who's going to walk through with an AK-47. You've got a climate crisis that everybody my age keeps telling, oh, you'll figure it out. The resentment of having felt abandoned by the past generations around these two issues, I think that is contributing to stressors in a way I did not understand before until this last few years of really seeing the toll that's taking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And to add to that, Peggy, I wanted to say at Didi Hirsch, we operate the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline. And that's a line that people can call when they're in either an emotional distress, suicidal crisis. And at Didi Hirsch, we took over 194,000 calls, chats, and texts just last year. Half of those were from youth 25 years and younger. So what we're seeing on the crisis line are youth, Gen Z, experiencing, I'm sure some of what you all know, depression, a lot of anxiety, suicidal thoughts, but also loneliness and a lack of connection to other people. A sense of connection to other people, that human connection, Sanaa mentioned it as well, is so critical to your well-being and connecting with others. So lots of issues are happening for the Gen Z. They're growing up during a time that is unprecedented. So I'm glad
Jaymes,
there's resources out there for you.
Jaymes, give me one moment.
I'd like to talk about a different kind of challenge. All of what you said is absolutely true. But I have a challenge for you as a generation who wants to make your careers in the entertainment industry. And the challenge is to change the culture of the industry. You care about work-life balance. You care about your mental health. So you have a big challenge ahead of you, because this industry, as we've talked about, is very hard on mental health for everyone who works in the industry, no matter what your role is. And you can bring about change by advocating for better mental health care, better working conditions, more humane working conditions. It's going to take a whole generation of people to really make that change happen. And I think you're the right generation to make that change.
You bet. Thank you. Over to you, Jaymes.
I was just going to add that I come to this conversation not as the CEO of Trevor Project, but as a parent. and as a former LGBTQ plus youth who desperately needed the services of Trevor Project. Because of that unique perspective, I'm raising Generation Alpha. The majority of our callers are Gen Z. I understand that as an older generation, I'm Gen X, that we need to do more to understand Generation Alpha and Gen X and Gen Z's issues. And oftentimes you hear people say, well, they're not as resilient as the past generations. We can't do that. What we need to do is truly understand where they're coming from. And as a parent, I had to learn this too, and listen to them. So when you talk about what challenges are Gen Z youth facing, I think they're facing a challenge of truly being listened to and truly ensuring that we understand where they're coming from. And so as the older generation, we have to do that. And we have to have this cross-generational view of mental health and not make our youth believe that they're not as strong or as resilient as the past generations.
Absolutely. I just want to add to that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Boateng. You and I were talking before we started how it would be great if adults would open up and share their backstories a bit about their struggles, not in a lecture-y kind of way, but for me, it took a pandemic for me to kind of open up about my mom's own mental health struggles to my daughters. I kind of had kept that trapped inside, and it wasn't healthy. So go ahead, Dr. Boateng.
No, I think what I'm hearing is so beautiful. There's so many elements that really tap into just a healthy relationship. Validating someone's experiences, being able to understand where they're coming from, listening, being able to listen more than we speak. Gen Z is a powerful, powerful generation. They have the insight to change the world, and now they need the resource. And it's our job to bring the resource of validation. It's our job to bring the resource of money and funding and centers of support that allow those beautiful ideas of how we can achieve work-life balance. We know we need it, but they actually have ideas on how to do it, right? And so it can be a beautiful relationship between Gen Z and other generations if we have the courage to validate the visions and dreams that they have about how our world can be.
Beautiful. So Sanaa, back to you. Are you seeing people more open in entertainment now, post-pandemic, about what they're struggling with?
Well, as a Gen Zer, what? Why are you laughing? No, I'm not. I'm not. I was really happy that this panel was happening, and I'm happy to be a part of it. But I'm not. I feel it's interesting because just personally, I've struggled with all kinds of anxiety, panic attacks, all kinds of things throughout the years, depression. And I have friends, but there is something happening right now where everybody feels lonely. Even though I have the same amount of friends, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that has to do with the internet or social media. I don't know what it is, but that loneliness thing is something that we have to address. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, yes, we have to talk to people and listen to people. But for me, it's really important for us to normalize having a mental self-care kit. Mm-hmm. And I had to curate that just out of necessity through many years living in this world as a woman, as a Black woman in Hollywood, just in the world. For me to survive, I had to have therapists. I had spiritual guides. I went on retreats. I did yoga. I learned all kinds of different meditation. So now, every single one of those modalities were worthy, and I just pick. But every day I have to do something, and I would love for the youth, for my fellow Gen Zers, to normalize, like how we normalize working out. Normalize, what am I doing for my soul today? What am I doing for my mind? And you can curate that for yourself. That's one of the beauties of the internet. You can learn anything. online. And so I would just love for people to just get into the mindset. We brush our teeth every day. We don't wait to brush our teeth once we have, an abscess. That's how we don't get one. And I think mentally we've got to do little things every day. It doesn't feel like, rocket science. It's very subtle feelings of raising your emotional state. It's subtle, but that's the way that you create mental health in the long run for yourself. And it begins with you. So that's what I would love to just get across to my fellow Gen Zers.
I love what you said. Love it, big hand. That thing about, and I know one of the questions that was shared with us in advance was about what are your tools? Like, how do you deal with it? And I have to say, I learned that. I am of a different generation. Like, I was built to work. I certainly veer into workaholism, except I will tell you, I don't even know anymore that I think I'm a workaholic. I actually enjoy working. I was just built that way. I was built to work hard, and I enjoy it. But what I enjoy now is that I really understand it's about being of service. I finally understood that that's the thing that gives me the most pleasure, where I feel most rewarded and most fulfilled. And I don't mind working hard. At the same time, it took me a while to learn, though, that I did need a balance. And I did need work. I did need breaks. And I actually had to train myself. I'm not kidding. I don't know if this was in my 40s. But I finally learned, I made myself, and I took a stopwatch, drive 15 minutes to go where I could see the ocean. I would give myself 10 minutes and make myself stand there for 10 minutes, and then I would run back home and do work. And then I stretched it to 15 minutes, and then I got it to 20. And I'm not kidding, I was having an anxiety attack for those 10 minutes, but I was like, I'm going to train myself to do this. And of course, that eventually turned into, I have been doing a regular meditation practice since my mid-30s. All that kind of stuff. But I really had to train myself to do that. And when I think of what do I do today, I don't watch a lot of news. I understand how news works. I understand it is built on sensationalism and conflict. I don't feel it tells the full story. I can just scan headlines and still answer all the questions right in the New York Times Daily, the weekly quiz about what's going on. But I really saw, and I saw this particularly post 9/11, what happened to friends of mine who watched those towers going down endlessly, what it did to their mental health. And we're very aware now of what's happened to people's mental health in the wake of the pandemic and the incredible toll it took on people who were supposed to be in the most social atmosphere and experiences of their life. So anyway, I go put down social media, put your phone away, and start to train yourself to take breaks. That's one suggestion I have that I can say worked for me.
Yeah, and I think finding a purpose outside your work identity is really important, because we're so focused, and we all enjoy work to a degree, but you have to find that purpose beyond work, because when work is not going well, what else can you connect to? What else do you have? And so you want to make sure that you spend just as much time nurturing your personal life as you do your professional life. That's a really important balance. We hear that all the time on the crisis line. And then it gives you some options, and it gives you other people to talk to. So finding that purpose is something that I would encourage all of you to do. And that's hard when you're first starting off your career. And it is very much, I'm sure, go get everything, try everything, work those long hours. But find that space. And find a space every day to be grateful for something. So every morning I start off with, what am I grateful for today? And I start that way every single morning before I get out of bed, because it sets a tone. So even on your hardest days, there's always something you can think of that you can be grateful for.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, you're going to spend so much time at work because it's the nature of the industry. So the people you work with become your family. You're often with them 12, 14 hours a day. So not only practice all of those self-care things that people have talked about, but also help others practice them. Share those practices. Speak openly about mental health. If you see someone that is having trouble, seems stressed out, seems depressed, seems anxious, don't hesitate to reach out to them. Share some of your tips for self-care with them. It's really important that you try and take care of your fellow workers, no matter who they are, and really create an atmosphere where they feel safe to talk about what's going on with them.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes.
Eli, we had a pre-chat. Can you talk a little bit, though, about your experience about, remember I was asking you about how do you balance what you feel triggers you, the stressors, and
yes.
you know, about how do you try to achieve balance when you talked about how you're all aware of so much of this stuff, but you still are baffled why more people don't take helpful action.
Yeah, so, I mean, most of you guys are Gen Z. I've come to think of Gen Z as just an emotionally, aware generation. So we grew up in a lot of turbulent times, which meaning when we were kids, we were probably often emotional regulators for, per se, our parents, for work, for all these different things. So in our current state, we're like young mid-20s, right? And we are the emotional regulators, but now we're actually getting put out into society, right? So we're trying to regulate all these emotions that we see are just completely out of bounds. All this stuff that we find is just utterly unacceptable. Well, now we're able to say things, but unfortunately, I don't think a lot of us do have the proper regulation experience of actually how to properly explain how we feel, explain why these things suck, explain why the industry is behind. And ultimately, we just turn into kids and then just kind of cuss and yell and hope things change. But at the end of the day, what we were talking about earlier is all around perception of being triggered versus being upset versus being attacked, right? There are all these things, and everything is so nuanced with Gen Z right now. Sometimes I don't even know if I'm if someone is being racist towards me. I couldn't tell you because of the way our humor is somewhat blending with our cultural identity in many facets. And so, I mean, for me, I'm a prototypical Gen Z creative. I'm full-time, I do social media. It's glorified paycheck to paycheck at times, which entertainment industry. But even before today, I think the past 3 or 4 days, I was in bed 70, 80% of them. In fact, I rolled out of bed today to hop in my shower, ate my first meal, which was cereal, and then hopped in an Uber to go talk on a panel at the Academy. All right, there's something a little funky about that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, guys, I am questioning myself. When she asked me that the first time, I was like, oh crap, I gotta sound smart, I gotta think, how do I feel about this? But honestly, doesn't it come down to our own perceptions of what triggers us, what emotionally hurts us, where we draw the line between standing up for ourselves versus understanding that maybe it's also nuanced. Being quieter can sometimes be more powerful than being the loudest one in the room, right? And so all I think about is we as Gen Z just need to be the emotional regulators. We really need to learn how to regulate ourselves, because if we're the active ones who are pointing shit out all the time, then we at least need to have some credentials and some know-how instead of yelling and cussing and hoping things change. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Thank you for that. So my next question is, what advice would you give those who want to create work that reflects mental health struggles in diverse, marginalized communities?
Just do it. I mean,
that's my Gen Z right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the best art I feel comes from truth and not worrying about what the trends of the industry are or what is, made the most streaming numbers or box office numbers, but really what story comes from you authentically. And we all have our own, we're all snowflakes in that. That sounded kind of weird, but like the snowflakes, how every snowflake is individually unique to itself. And we all have our stories, and each and every one of our stories is worthy. And I just think that, telling the truth and not being afraid to be vulnerable to that truth, I think that's what is going to really create some amazing art going forward. And it's going to help people because, the struggles that you have, so many other people have, and when they see themselves reflected, that makes them feel less alone, and that's kind of half the battle sometimes.
I also think that it's about, we are in an industry that's about entertainment, and entertainment is drama, it's comedy, it's and everything in between, and it's about storytelling. So I don't think I set out to make, when I think of all the films that I've worked on and had the pleasure to participate in as a producer, and or the handful of things I directed, you're telling a story. Now, there's a reason that story called to me, or that I felt I was the one to tell it. And I didn't always understand it at the beginning. I bet you have that experience. Like, you learn so much in the process of making it. So I don't use film to make a political statement. A political statement or movement can come out of it. But for that to happen, it has to succeed as entertainment and art and a good story. So that's where, so it's not quite as schematic as that, But of course, what's Eli going to take? There's a new movie out, Didi. Think of the many beautiful films you've made. What's wonderful finally that's going on, finally, in the last 5 to 10 years, is you are seeing much more diverse representation and protagonists represented on screen, and I am so grateful for that movement.
I just want to add to that. I'm not in the film industry, but as someone who watched a lot of film growing up, who was a film buff, TV, I just want to say that we just need to see more representation and more possibility models. As a queer Black youth growing up in South Texas who watched a lot of TV, had I seen that having panic attacks wasn't something that was weird, or that it meant that I was sick or crazy, or that it was something that I needed to hide from my parents, had I seen that those models were possible, or that it was possible that I was going to survive, media is where we need to see that. That's what shifts public perception. We need more of that, and I know that we see more of that. We see more diverse voices. We're talking about mental health, but I know that we can do more, and I know that there's some other BIPOC, rural, little girl in, say, South Texas who needs to see that even today. So to make art and film that still show the possibilities, that you can have mental health issues, you can have panic attacks, you can have all those things and still survive and thrive, we still need to show that, and people still need to see that. They're begging for it.
Thank you. Dr. Boateng, I was going to go to you.
Yeah, and that is so powerful. And when you're telling stories and you're telling the truth, you're also upending, you're also uprooting a lot of your own story, your own experiences, right? And so it's really important that you get the support that you need if you're telling that story. That you're going to be at times triggered by writing something that I've lived. I know this, it's in my DNA, it's in my ancestry. I feel it really deep, right? And so I need to get closer to that truth and get clarity about how it's changed me, how it's impacted me, how it's still plaguing people that look like me, and the sorrow that comes with that. It's okay to be broken by it as you're still building it. But you need the support as you're doing it, because it is antagonistic to cause more harm when telling the story about your pain.
And if you're lucky enough to have it accepted to become a movie, etc., remember that the people who are helping you make that, it may bring up pain for them. It may trigger them. And too often they're not considered and taken care of. So keep that in mind.
I just have to say what you just said resonated with me so deeply. Again, I'm not in film, but I wrote a story, and I write sometimes, called Black Girls Cut Too, because I had this years and years and years issue with self-harm. And when I wrote that story, and it was connected to even the Black experience of self-harm, it was connected to people believing that Black folks didn't cut. And after I wrote that story, I had this feeling, I had this almost a rebirth or so, but that I needed support, and I didn't know that I needed support. So I just want to thank you for that, because I didn't know I needed the support while sort of birthing that new version of me.
And the world doesn't tell us that we get it.
No.
Right? And so that's why it's so beautiful that you take the support.
Yeah.
You offer it, right? It's the abundance of that you're worthy of.
Yes.
And as young artists, I'm assuming you all are young artists, right? And just know that it is entertainment, and it is so powerful in terms of the people who watch it. I grew up in a business, and I'm not that old, but I grew up in a business where I didn't see myself reflected. I saw there was one show on TV. What we see now on TV is amazing compared to what I saw, and I can't even imagine the generations behind me. Magazines didn't have anybody that looked like me. There was always one. And when you don't see yourself reflected, that affects your self-esteem. It affects your worth. And so just know that the stories that you tell can be very cathartic, not only for you, but for the people who are watching. The intention that you put into that story, people will feel.
Thank you for that. So what can people do to prevent a mental health crisis? And if they're in one, what do they do? What do they do?
Well, I would say, first of all, don't be afraid to reach out for support. There are a lot of people struggling out there with mental health issues right now. And don't be afraid to offer support to somebody else as well. On our 988 crisis line, we get lots of people who call who are in emotional distress, but we get lots of people that call who are concerned about somebody else, and they don't know what to do, and they want to help somebody. So know that you can reach out for help. That's one of the most important things that you can do, because not everybody sees the mental health struggles. We all see physical struggles, but we don't always see the mental health struggles.
What is the 90-day? What is the 90-day?
The 988? So 988,
Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was okay.
No, yeah, so just very quickly for all of you guys, so you should know this resource because it's really important, because it is 24/7, it's free, it's confidential, it's anonymous, and it's 988. You can dial that, you can chat, you can text, and it's a crisis line for people who are struggling with their mental health or are having suicidal ideation, or for people who want to help somebody and call and say, hey, I have a friend who just told me they don't think their life is worth living anymore, and I don't know what to say to them. What do I do? You can call 988. You will get a trained counselor on the line to be able to talk you through that, whether you're the one in crisis or helping somebody else. And it's always there, no matter what time you are all working. We've talked about the long days and the long hours. That resource is always there and available to you.
And if you want to help, oh, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, and if you dial 988 and hit option 3 for LGBTQ plus folks, so you will actually be routed to a crisis counselor who has the cultural competency to navigate the unique issues that LGBTQ plus youth have to contend with.
We helped get that passed. The Trevor Project did. I'm bragging.
Yes. We did.
We got special funding for it.
That was an amazing accomplishment.
And if you want to be able to help people, friends, family, colleagues, peers, One of the things that you can do is to take a mental health first aid class. Become a mental health first aider. It's a one-day class. You learn a lot in it, and you learn how to help people and then get them to appropriate professional help. But you learn how to recognize signs and symptoms that someone might be depressed, anxious, going into any kind of a crisis, and you learn how to have a conversation with them, how to listen non-judgmentally, and how to reassure them and get them to professional help. It can go, that one-day class can really go a long ways. You'll use it every day in your interactions with others.
If people also are looking for resources, the Trevor Project has a bunch, so that if you're either a parent, a supportive adult, ally, you're trying to think about what you might be able to do to help a young person you know who may be struggling based on their identity or orientation, we have lots of resources to help people, so that's online. The other thing is, we've been talking about loneliness and the necessity of community. Trevor also has an online community that is moderated, available 24/7 and safe, called Trevor Space. And what that is that there you can find other folks who are just like you. One of the things that we realize, and a lot of, as Eli has talked about a little bit, and I know Didi Hirsch mentions about how much this comes up, but if you cannot find community in person, which is, I always think, best, but I know for a lot of our audience, that's not an option from them. They do not live in supportive homes or supportive communities. This is a place you can go safely online, where you're not going to be hassled about your identity. We do moderate the content so that if anybody tries to get inappropriate in any way, it gets taken care of. And you get to be you. You get to join a special interest group, people who are into Minecraft, all kinds of stuff in that community, So I put in a plug for that as a resource, depending upon your age and interest.
Is it just behind the scenes has a lot of resources. Our program was created by the industry, specifically for the industry. And so lots of entertainment industry professionals participated in that, as well as mental health professionals who work solely with our industry. So everything online was really geared towards speaking directly to you in a language that we hope resonates with those who work in the entertainment industry. There's lots and lots of free resources up there, so I encourage you to visit that and check that out.
Thank you. Can we go down the line and you can all share the different resources your organization provide? And Sanaa, you can talk about things that you use for coping through the industry? Go ahead, Jaymes.
So Peggy just mentioned our resources. So we have our Trevor Lifeline, which is our 24/7 crisis services, and that is via text, chat, or phone. And we also have Trevor Space, which is an online community. And then again, the 988 number, if you are an LGBTQ plus person and you hit option 3, then you will reach someone who is culturally competent in handling those really unique stressors that we have to deal with. And then aside from that, we have a plethora of resources and research. We have a research team that does deep research on the unique issues and stressors of LGBTQ plus youth, and those research papers can be used as a resource if you're a parent or if you're a youth who just wants to learn more about the experiences that we have to deal with.
And one of the hardest things to do when you're in crisis is to have to know what to do when you're in crisis. And so the only thing that you need to do in crisis is to get to help. My community, as therapists, it's our job to be able to walk you through step by step what needs to happen. And so if it is you, if it is someone else, that one step, I want you to remember that. And sometimes it's really difficult to get to a therapist because you don't have the resources, because you don't see one that looks like you. And so there are several organizations that have done a lot of work, especially in the pandemic, to provide resources for therapy. One of them is the Loveland Foundation. Rachel Cargill has done a wonderful job creating a fund for those that need therapy, and sometimes you need it urgently. Another one is Dear Sis, Taraji P. Henson's foundation, Boris L. Henson Foundation, that has resources also for therapy. And so don't let that be a step that stops you from getting the help that you need. There are organizations out here that will help you to get the resources to get therapy.
And just to follow up on that real quickly, one of the things that we started, because we heard so much from people in the industry, how difficult it was to find a therapist who understood anything about working in the industry and the unique stresses. So we created something called the Entertainment Industry Therapist Finder. And all the therapists listed have industry experience, either because they've already worked with a lot of industry people, or they used to work in the industry themselves. And we've discovered the mental health field is a very popular second career for people from the entertainment industry. But you know, when you go there, you're getting someone who understands what you're dealing with. They understand the long hours, the stress. They're not gonna, ask you who you've worked with or, for tickets to something or that kind of thing. They get it. So it's a really great way to get to help that will, really, you'll be able to dive right in.
Thank you. We only have about 2 minutes, and then we're going to take audience questions. Does somebody just want to take it for a minute, and then maybe we'll turn it to Eli for 1 minute? If you want to share any resources, you don't have to.
I got so many resources, guys.
They're
talking about their resources, but wait till I talk about my resources,
Well, they can also come up to you at the post-reception.
Oh, no, that was me being sarcastic. So,
I just want to reiterate, listen, we all have crisis points, but just reiterate that even when you're fine, start sowing those seeds of how you strengthen yourself spiritually and emotionally and mentally, because life will get hard because you're human. For me, I've had therapists since I got into the business in my early 20s. Sometimes I'm talking to them once a week. Sometimes I go, 6 months without. But it's something that is always in my life. Meditation has been really big for me. I went through a period where I lost a friend of mine suddenly, and also had a stalker for a whole year, and I didn't deal with it, and I didn't know what a panic attack was. I didn't think Black girls had panic attacks. I was like, just breathe. You know what I mean? I was like, come on, what do you mean you can't breathe? And then it started happening to me in a real way where I thought I was dying, and I thought I was having heart attacks on set, like out of the blue. And I went to the doctor, and he explained what it was. He's like, you're having anxiety attacks. You haven't been dealing with the stressors of life, and so your body is going to deal with it. He wanted to put me on medication. I come from a very holistic mother. I'm not against medication, but I didn't want that to be my first stop. So I learned at that point a kind of meditation called transcendental meditation. 20 minutes twice a day. It's a 4-day course. And the day I started doing that meditation, the panic attacks went away. And then I became obsessed. I was like, how is this possible? That particular organization did a lot of research because they had money. But I believe that there's so many different types of meditations that really affect the brain in a real way, and that is very powerful. So meditation is part of my life every day, and I just encourage young people, especially with this, the addictive nature of the phones, to have that space. I love how you kind of created your own meditation where you looked at the ocean. Like you can breathe and just put the phone down. It can be as simple as just breathing, so.
Beautiful, thank you. We have to go to audience questions. Thank you for that. So we have several questions. We'll try to get to a lot of them. And we're going to begin with a question from Shawnette. This is for Sanaa. As artists, sometimes our passion can be a blessing and a curse. Was there a time that you reached rock bottom and wanted to give up? What or who pulled you out of it?
God, how many times? I've been doing this forever. Somebody was saying, you never stop, no matter. For me, it wasn't an option. there's no backup plan. I think because in my 20s I had kind of a life coach who was kind of more spiritually based. It really saved me with the whole auditioning process, which is, it can be taken as rejection. And that can do a number on your self-esteem, being rejected over and over and over again. And anybody who you see on TV has gone through that. But for me, I had to create a whole story about it. Like, this is my opportunity to do what I love in the room. I'm gonna have fun today. And if you wanna get on my train, because my train is going. It's going there. It's getting to the destination. If you want to get on my train, then you can. And if you don't, then okay, I had fun today. That took a while to get to that point. And yes, it still hurt at times. And I was pre Time's Up and Me Too, and the things that were said and done during those years could be excruciating, but for me there was just never an option. So that's why I just created that toolbox to just keep me resilient. And I encourage you all as young artists to develop your own.
That's great. So this one really could be for anyone. Next question is from Sally. What are some mental health practices that changed your life?
Well, I'll throw out one. It did take building a muscle. And I will say both yoga and meditation helped rewire my brain. But I finally have learned this thing that I do now, which is I know that there are certain things I want, but I also know that it's out of my control if they'll truly come to pass. Like, let's say you have a job you want, right? You have a project you want to sell. You have a meeting you want to get. You want to nail it, and you want to come across as good, whatever it is. But I learned to start doing, before I walked into any meeting, it's going to sound kind of crazy, but I'll go with it. I shouldn't use that word. This comes out of a spiritual practice of believing that there is a force bigger than me at work in the world. I don't see it as linear. I don't think it's got a big plan for me, but I just believe there's a force. And I try to live as much as I can in alignment with that and learn from what shows up in my life. After all these years, I've now learned to say, whoever that other person is, I kind of imagine they got a higher up or whatever, and I just go, may this be for the greatest good of all involved. And that's what I use. And so every time I'm like, really, my ego is so attached to something. Oh my God. And have I got an ego? But I just have to go, it's either may this be for the greatest good, the outcome for the greatest good, or I say, I want this or something better. And I don't need to know what something better looks like. It's helped me deal with rejection.
Can I just give a little, I don't know, I've heard about this experiment. I don't know what it's called, but these students planted 3 plants, and one they watered and gave sunlight. The second they watered, gave sunlight, and said, please, they prayed over it. They said, please grow tall. And then the third one they gave water and sunlight, and they said, highest will be done. And the first one grew, the second one grew twice as big as the first, and then the third one grew like exponentially, like it was just, so, we're getting into the spirituality of it all. But I believe in, kind of letting go and letting God or letting the universe, letting the higher power, whatever you believe. There's something very freeing in that. And I also believe that, the best always comes of that.
And it may not feel it, though, at the
At
time.
first.
I will tell you. I've had many painful experiences. I've been fired. I've been rejected. I've had
Man's
really...
rejection is God's protection.
Yeah, hate that saying. Hate that saying.
I love that. I love it.
Hey, listen, while we're on it, okay, fully revealing. I got to say, one of the things when we talk about resources, folks don't hear a lot about, but when you're not in crisis, but you know you could just use community, some ongoing help. I got to tell you, I'm a fan of 12-step programs. And I grew up in a family where there was a lot of alcohol and substance abuse. And so I have availed myself of a group called Al-Anon that's been very helpful to me. But there is a 12-step program for just about anything, man. Anything in the world. And I will say there's no guarantee. Every room is different. That's what's kind of fascinating by it. So you do have to find your right community or peeps or right meeting. There's a million of them online now since the pandemic. But for ongoing maintenance, it's virtually free. And I know that accessibility and affordability are major issues, especially when you're coming into your career, early career years. So for what it's worth, it's helped me.
Thank you. I want to turn it to Eli for a second. So can you talk a little bit about things you do to find balance as, a creator, influencer?
So let me break this down into kind of two answers for you. One of them is going to be a more practical thing that I've learned, and one of them is definitely more like ooga booga type stuff, I guess. Like feel the emotions, I guess. One of my recent ways of thinking about life is most days I struggle just to think about existing. Like it gets that bad. I'm sure a lot of you understand what I'm feeling. Like existing is the first priority. And so growing up, you just hear so much stuff. You hear exist with purpose, exist with love, exist with all these different things, and existing in itself is already hard enough some days. And so my line of thinking now is just existing with compassion. No matter what, at the end of the day, as long as I'm existing and I have my compassion, then that can carry me to where at least I know I'm stable. Because those are the two things that no matter what will circle back. It will come back around, and living with that has just brought me a lot more perspective. Now, practically speaking here, I've never been a big fan of exercises. I've been in therapy for quite a bit of time now, and my therapist, we'll call her Kelly for now. Kelly was always like, dog, just do the freaking exercises I give you. What are you doing, man? And I just refused for so long, and I'm just like, wow, these simple brain exercises, there's no way it can pull me out of
Wait, excuse me, why? Why did you push back? You didn't want to do it?
Maybe it was ego, maybe it was pride, maybe it was, I'm scared if it does work. Who really knows why we don't take some of the steps to help ourselves? So I was extremely suicidal. I talked to my therapist, and she's like, okay, Eli, it's time, let's go to an IOP program. For those of you who don't know, an IOP is an intensive outpatient care program. So think being hospitalized for suicidal tendencies, and then there's the IOP, which is kind of the step outside of that. And so in the IOP, they equip you, you do a lot of group therapy, you do a lot of individual therapy, but they equip you with frameworks or guides that at this point, being in an IOP program, I was like, okay, I'll do the mental exercises. Yeah, I'm down. And one of them is so simple, but I find myself coming back to it often. In fact, it's probably the only mental exercise I do to take care of my brain. So it's a good one, I promise. It's whenever you start feeling anxious, whenever you start feeling an onset of any strong emotion, you just imagine that all of this is when you're in a particular room, a 4x4 room. And it is your choice when you start to feel that way, when you start to open that door, of if you go in that room or if you just let it exist in that room, close the door, and walk away. And that has saved me so many times from spiraling and anxiety attacks in a lot of different cases. And So I do need to learn more, and I encourage all of us to just learn more of these exercises. But that's the one that I can firmly say has like helped my life and made a meaningful impact in it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give this next one to Jaymes. This is from Kennedy, has given us this question. I would like to, so I'll give it to Jaymes. What are some tools that, if you're starting out early in a career, are important to have in order to have balance in the industry? Maybe your mental fitness toolkit.
Yeah, I was first going to say the self-care is really important. So ensuring that you have a self-care practice. I have to say that I grew up in a world where self-care was not something that was honored or that we talked about. And so when I started my career and I started in corporate America, I just worked myself to death. And it was really about thriving. It was about the position title. It was about achieving. And I ended up, crashing at some point. And so, and as a young person, and you start making money and you're getting titles, you really don't understand that this is not sustainable and that it's not all about the company, it's really about you. And so, yes, self-care, a self-sustaining meditation practice. I meditated. Someone asked earlier, what's changed your life? I started Buddhism. I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist, but just understanding Buddhist practices and that we aren't what we think has been huge for me. And then the second thing I would say when you're starting off your career is get a mentor. I asked folks to be my mentor. I didn't care if they said yes, no, if they rejected me. I wanted a mentor, and I found mentors. And really, you'll find people along the way who are really open to mentoring you and who want to do it and who will make the time. So find that mentor. Typically, I think someone a little bit older than you who's sort of been through the rungs of things, and they can actually give you advice. But I think mentorship is really important to find a mentor, and find different mentors. Don't stay with the same mentor. A mentor, for say 6 months to a year, and then find a different mentor. So mentorship is really important, but self-care is key, and don't burn yourself out. It's not worth it.
Dr.
And
Boateng?
find allies.
Sorry, allies?
Yeah. Find allies. Yeah, mentors, of course, but also find allies amongst those you work with, people you know you can go to when you're struggling, who will be there for you and will listen to you.
Thank you. And Dr. Boateng, in your practice, what would you say?
Yeah, sitting at the intersection of ambition and emotional wellness, I hear this all the time. There is a world where you can attend to your emotional wellness and still succeed. Beginning to understand that success looks like emotional wellness is the goal. If I can really live out this dream, our dream really at the core of it is to be happy, to be healthy, to be free, to be fully ourselves. That's at the core of whatever thing that you're looking for and you're striving for. And so find a tribe. Find people that really value what you value. If it is that you're going to do self-care, you have 2 people that are going to hold you accountable. Your tribe. We're doing this together. Every week we're going to check in. We're going to actually ask the questions. How are you really? How do you feel? Why are you going for that job? What is it about this that's driving you? What's your motive here? People that can look you in your eye and actually ask you these questions is really, really important. And so that tribe, the people that are around you, will determine how you feel about your life. They will determine where you go in your life, and they will determine who you become. And so that's the most powerful thing you can do. Another thing that I'll say is kind of what Eli said, self-compassion. That is the one thing, if any of you are in therapy, your therapist is teaching you about self-compassion. They may not be saying it that way. Why is that? Because it changes your brain, it changes where you go, and it changes your self-concept. And so beginning to think about your spirit, your being, as something that I get to take care of this being. I get to attend to her. I get to listen to her. I get to have empathy for her, right? And so that's also a part of your work. That's also a part of your ambition when you're starting out and you're going after jobs. How will I tend to this being that I've been entrusted with? And that's true success if I can do that.
That's
Where
so
were you when I started my
powerful.
career?
I know.
Can we get a round of applause for that? My
Yes.
goodness. Spit.
Beautiful.
We all need an appointment.
A great way to tap into that self-compassion is to get a baby picture of yourself or a picture of yourself as a toddler. Put it up so that you see it, and so that, because sometimes it's hard to tap in, like, how do I have self-compassion for me? But if you really can look at you as a little 2 or 3 year old, you could put it on your phone. That's who you're taking care of.
I love that. Go ahead, Lynn.
No, I was just saying that was a really powerful comment as well, because we forget about ourselves in all of this because it becomes about the daily grind. And so the powerful comments you all made about, I can't beat that. I mean, that was wonderful comments and just really powerful stuff. So thank you.
There's one thing it makes me remember. This really helped me. You know, here's the thing that's been great. Like, I didn't know what the hell an inner child was for a great time. Everybody knows that now, right? Now, that's been a great gift of And now what I've begun to realize is that we all have all these different parts in ourselves. And I've started to really, there's not just an inner child. I got an inner teen. I got a 20-year-old. I've definitely got a 17-year-old that wants to look cool all the time. But what I started to learn is there's stuff, though, where that younger part really takes over, is very strong. I feel that I identify with that part of me very strongly. And I'd have to start going, who's driving the car? And I started doing this thing where I'd imagine the car, and then I'd go, here. And I'd put the kid in a little baby thing with a wheel. And I'd go, okay, we're going to move you into the baby seat now. And you get to drive the car from here, but I'm going to, like the older me, I'm going to take over now, and I'm going to keep us safe. Okay? You don't have to. I'll keep us safe. And that was one of the things that also helped me.
That's why you're cool, right? don't even worry about the 17-year-old self. You're cool.
This next question, I'll give it to you, Peggy. It comes from Batia. How do you recommend advocating for yourself in the workplace when it comes to taking care of your mental health and setting boundaries? Did you want to take it? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's really important to try to set those boundaries, but let's face it, it's really tough to do in this business. There's no question about it. So you have to, I think it does come back to that self-care, because sometimes you really aren't able, depending on your role, to set those boundaries. So it's taking care of yourself, it's taking care of each other, of your fellow workers, so that as a group, you're looking out for each other. Because let's face it, sometimes management isn't going to be looking out for you. So it's really important that you advocate when and where you can, but also be sure to take care of yourself and each other.
And if I could add,
Yes.
advocate for mental health coordinators
Yes,
on set so that we can
absolutely.
give you language.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just want to say something that I'm really proud of. Next week at Trevor is Wellness Week, right, Peggy?
Yes, ma'am.
And that is an entire week of wellness, meaning we don't work, we take care of ourselves. And advocate for those types of benefits with your employers. That's what someone as a Gen X, we don't think that way. Those types of ideas come from Gen Z, and those are ideas that I think we tend to reject, but we really need those types of ideas. Even 32-hour work weeks. I think thinking about how do we sort of turn this notion of 40-hour work week and the grind on its head, so we can align with who we are, so we can connect to ourselves. Don't be afraid to advocate for those types of benefits. They're really, really important.
It's really tough in this industry.
Yeah.
We heard from a lot of people who said that if they asked for time off to go and see a therapist, they would lose the job or not get hired for the next one. Wow. So it's tough. You have to, slowly advocate, slowly try to change that culture. Yeah. And we're starting to see little
That's why you do what you do.
Towards it.
Yeah.
This is, though, I have to say, and this is what I think is important, though, is about expectations. And I think that sometimes there's misaligned expectations. every industry has its own needs in order to operate, to do what it does, right? So you work in a bank, that's one set of expectations and hours. You work in the tourist business, you're going to deal with a whole nother thing. Restaurants, whole other thing. The movie business, when you're in production, and I have to say, I don't think this is only true in production, people that are executives and what it's required and the hours required to be an executive in the movie business, the dinners, the lunches, the breakfasts, the schmooze, the work the rooms, the this and that. Everybody, from the outside, it looks glamorous, and you think it's really cool. The truth is, the entertainment business is really hard work. Okay? So it's true, if you want a 40-hour work week would be a luxury, to be honest, for entertainment. You know, so like I go, if you want that and you know it's important to you, this probably isn't the business for you. And that's where I mean about, don't set yourself up for frustration about having unrealistic expectations. This is not a gig these are not jobs for everybody, much less it's very the way I came up. You know, I never worked steady until I worked as a professor at NYU, and I was dean of a film school. That was the first like regular job with a straight paycheck I ever had. The whole rest of my career was gig work. Like the gig, if you get it set up as a producer, it's your job to go find the money for this story you want to tell and help make. And when you do it, you know, what's a work hour? It's a 17-hour day.
Excuse
17
me?
to 18.
I don't, excuse me, I don't mean to cut you off. We
Yeah,
have to
but-
give resources and.
Okay,
Actually-
but I just, my only point really was
but
expectations.
I would love all of you to connect with the panelists at the post-reception, but we want to give the resources right now on the screen. And, but come up to everybody, because for instance, some of the websites for different people are not on here, so come up and meet everybody at the post-reception, and be sure to connect with these resources. And I want to thank what an incredible group of panelists. Can you give it up for them? Thank you so much for joining us. This was great.